Yeah. Hi, everybody, and welcome to our panelists for the panel Perspectives and Progress of AI. I would like to welcome our panelists and start with Viviane, who is an architect and co-founder of CoPlannery, which is an AI-powered collaboration platform for architecture and for the planning industry. So Viviane, as you're not as our both other panelists, you're not an AI specialist, but you're an architect.
I'm an architect.
And
I'm an IT architect. It's important to mention sometimes.
Yeah. So how did you get the idea to actually use AI for your platform? And maybe you could describe a little. What does your platform do? What is it? What is its function? And where does AI help with that?
Okay, sure. So for people who want to build a house or remodel their home, we have built an online advisor, the Baustarte in German, and it takes you or it guides you through every step of the planning and construction process, basically from your first idea until you move in. And we first find out in much detail what your needs are, your personal needs are and requirements are, and then we set up your whole project, including the architectural design, your construction loan, and your insurance. So we're basically introducing a whole new user experience for a process or an industry that is known for its intransparency and complexity. Right now, we're still in production mode because we're launching early next year, so then you can try it out. What does AI do at CoPlannery? So in architecture, there are no off-the-shelf solutions. So every house, every building is unique and individual. And even if you take a prefabricated home, the local context of your building site will be unique, and you have to know this in advance. Or the way the residents use their house, this will be unique, and you have to know this in advance before planning and placing the building on the site. And what we did is that we have built a robo-advisor that asks our customers who want to build a house a series of unique questions, and it can detect topics that are important to you in order to ask more questions about it. So, for instance, if sustainability is important to you, not for other people, but for you, then the robo-advisor asks you more about the building materials or the heating system, because that affects your budget or the building cost. And the output of this process is a very structured set of requirements data that we can use as a project brief for our architects to design your house, but also to find the right construction loan and right insurance policy for you, because that has to be an individual match as well. So what we use AI for in the future is to really mass customize our service in order to find or create a home for you that really mirrors your needs and requirements.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And do you train it yourself, or do you have?
So. I mean, concerning AI, you know, I'm super curious about it, but I'm also super pragmatic and curious in a sense because I'm an architect, but in my academic past, I've done a lot of research on computational design methods in architecture and construction, but also mass customization. And this aspect of mass customization is, you know, our very goal at CoPlannery. And at the same time, we're in an under-digitized industry, and we're still pre-launch. And AI has also underwent a huge, you know, buzzword inflation, if you will, and saying that you as a startup is doing something with AI, you know, is raising the expectations to a very high level. And we always have to say, okay, well, slow down. We have to, you know, it takes a long to to develop this intelligence, or it takes a long time for you to perceive these systems as intelligent. And so right now we're still collecting data. We need more interactions in order to produce this intelligence.
So it's
like a baby.
It's more like a process of
because you can't give birth to an adult, you know. It's just you give birth to a baby, and it has to learn how to speak. And so the infrastructure is there, the DNA is there, but you know everything else has to be taught.
Okay. So maybe next we have a look at what Rupert is doing with AI. I mean, you are in this field for quite a while, and you have already worked for several companies, like the Otto Group, for example, as a business intelligence leader. And now you got the idea to found a startup and build deep shopping bots. And maybe you can tell us a little, how did you get that idea, and what are these bots exactly? What do they do?
Yeah, thanks. The idea to Wonder is quite a while ago, but before AI, we missed the technology to implement it. So I ever felt that online shopping is not direct enough, there's missing personal relevance, it's not fast enough, it's overnight batches, consolidating consumer states of belief, and so on. And then with AI, the technology came up to really build it. So deep shopping bots are assistive systems that support consumers in the shopping context. At Wunder, we are building so-called cognitive AI, helping consumers to find the right product. And the real challenge is to build systems that are clever enough. That sounds easy, but it is not. So there is no lean AI, because AI needs a far better quality at the cornerstones. First, AI needs better quality with the UI and UX. We built something what we call the playground. This is the sensing inventory, going to all the cognitive sensors like obvious preferences, styles, activities, and mainly emotions. Second, then you need for AI, you need a real-time execution system which performs really fast and making those kind of data inference. Technically, you can think it as a combination of real-time streaming analytics and data science methodology. This mind machine is, how we call it, this is mimicking consumer's mind, at real time inferring the data and building up consumer section self with every click. And third, you need better data, definitely. So what we built is a special blend of product data, which we call the product graph. And this product graph contains cognified metadata. That means we have engineered human-level meaning on the products so that every product can tell its own story. With every loop then of the sense, infer, act, and learn, we are performing two analytical features. The first is called next best insight. That means the system knows best over time what's the next best question it should ask. And the second feature is called next best offer, refining consumer's choice with every click.
Mm-hmm. All right. And what is the business model behind such an application? How do
the basic business model is an affiliate model. So Wunder is a customer company. We are getting leads from social media, then doing intent recognition on purchases, and then delivering higher qualified leads to the fulfillment partners, that's meaning the online stores. But the solution is going beyond shopping, so it's more. It could be more thought as a kind of lifestyle assistant even. So at the moment we are in talks with a large hedge fund to build what could be called the artificial investor's mind. We are in talks with an automotive manufacturer who is thinking about what will consumers do while driving in a self-driving car and so on. So that's, and this business model is then a B2B integration model where we build a white label solution for the B2B partner and sharing insights on customer insight and engagement.
All right. So after having had a look at two really hands-on use cases of AI in quite different fields of business, I would now like to approach to yet another perspective, and that's that of an AI researcher. With Toby Walsh, we have a really famous AI researcher here in Berlin at the moment. You're here you're a guest professor here at the moment, but usually you work at the University of New South Wales in Australia. And your approach is a little different. You look at how AI can be used to make better decisions for the benefit of the society. And maybe you have one or two examples on where you are looking into it, where AI could be of use.
One thing I do is actually try and dispel lots of the misconceptions that people have about AI. I don't know if Elon Musk has tweeted this morning, but you should ignore everything he says about AI because he's a fantastic engineer. He should focus on building Teslas. He should focus on trying to get us settled on Mars. I'm pretty confident he's going to do a fantastic job about that. But he's not, with respect, an AI researcher. He doesn't really understand what we should be worried about, and he's mostly concerned. I mean, I don't know if he's more dangerous than Trump is with his tweets, but he's mostly concerned about things that are so distant and so unlikely that we shouldn't be focused on them. And there are much more immediate concerns that we should be worried about. We should be worried about how stupid AI is being let into our lives and affecting our political debate, affecting Facebook and things like this. So I spend a lot of my time trying to put aside these misconceptions that people have and focus on the things that AI will be good for. And as a researcher, I spend a lot of my time increasingly. AI is a technology that can be used for good or for bad, and I try and focus my attention at least on the good applications. So how can we use it to make decisions that will improve our lives? So I work with Food Bank Australia and food banks around the world, helping them improve the logistics of their operations. I'm working with the Organ and Transplant Authority in Australia, helping them work out how to more efficiently match kidneys to patients. That's a decision problem it's made tougher by fewer and fewer kidneys being donated because the roads are getting safer. So how can we more efficiently match the kidneys to the patients? So AI has a lot of promise, but it's like any technology. It can be used for good or for bad. And I was recently at the United Nations in Geneva talking about some of the bad applications, about how it can be used in warfare and the risks that poses to our lives.
Yeah, maybe you can tell us a little more. You were really engaged in this issue, and you were speaking to the UN in Geneva, I think, about the ban of so-called killer robots, autonomous machines that might kill and destroy without intervention of human beings. So, what was the outcome of that? Is there awareness there?
The outcome is a positive one, I'm happy to tell you, which is that the United Nations decided last Friday that they would continue the formal discussions, which will hopefully end with a ban on autonomous weapons. We have decided the various weapons, chemical weapons, biological weapons, blinding lasers, cluster munitions, a number of technologies are too dangerous and sufficiently vile that we shouldn't put them in the battlefield. And this is one technology that I very much hope we decide as well. It will be a weapon of mass destruction. Previously, if you wanted to do harm, you needed an army. You needed to equip an army, you needed to feed an army, you needed to pay for an army of people to do it. Once we have autonomous weapons, we won't. One person can control 1,000 or 10,000 autonomous drones. It won't be like Terminator. That's the wrong picture. People, whenever I talk about autonomous weapons, people put up a picture of Terminator. That's the wrong thing to think of. The thing to think of is an autonomous drone. We already have semi-autonomous drones that can fly largely without human control. But it's a small technical step to remove the human completely and have a computer make the final life or death decision. That's something that's very near. Within the next 5 or 10 years, there will be those sorts of arms being sold by arms companies around the world. Russia, China, United Kingdom, the United States, all Israel, they're all rapidly trying to develop this technology. It will be a terrible step change in how we fight war, and one that we don't have to decide. One that we could decide that actually, no, it goes in the category of all those other weapons that we've decided are morally unacceptable to use to fight war with. And one that hopefully the United Nations will continue its deliberations and will hopefully ban. So it's up to us, though. It's up to all of us to lobby that happens. It comes from the pressure that we as citizens of the world make, that we decide that the chemical weapons were morally unacceptable, and that's why chemical weapons aren't used today, that we decided that they were repugnant, that we decided it was not acceptable, and arms companies don't sell them. That's how chemical weapons are no longer largely used. That's how autonomous weapons, how AI would not be used in the battlefield, is if we decide, you and I decide, that it's not acceptable. So please join with me in lobbying to our politicians, lobbying the United Nations, lobbying to our politicians that doesn't happen. And if it does, it will be terrible. It will be a terrible way to fight war. It will be weapons. You can't defend yourself against weapons that will be fighting 24/7, weapons that will have speed of reflex that you or I will not be able to defend ourselves against. So it will be a terrible development if we allow this technology not be to use to make our lives better, to make the way that we build houses improve, to make the way that we shop improve, but to make the way we kill people improved, and that won't be a good development. So I implore you to join the campaign, if you have the ear of people in power, to persuade them that this is a morally unacceptable use of technology.
So that, yeah.
Thank you.
So I think this is one of the moral responsibilities we really have to take care of now, and it's quite obvious that that if we don't get this right, the outcome might be disastrous. But when we go back a little to the more day-to-day use of AI, then we still might, there are still some effects maybe that we haven't intended when we started using AI, which might not be as devastating as the one of killer robots, but also something we have to think about when we develop these systems and when we train them and when we use them. Rupert, have you come upon effects when using your bots that suddenly they developed in a way that was not as what you wanted them to behave like, or what are the difficulties in?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to assistive, or at least at autonomous systems, I think when you build systems, you have to differentiate between goals and values. Take a self-driving car, going from A to B is the goal, but stop for pedestrians, that's the value. And I think whenever you put AI applications into the real world, they must be aligned with human values. I think that's the most important point to consider.
Mm-hmm. And Viviane, have you come upon unwished effects when you were starting to experiment with the communication bot?
Yes. For example, the effect on the user of our AI. You know, it sounds so mystical, but our experience was that people were hesitant about using or interacting with something that is that the people can't understand and don't know what it can do, and. So you have to really, I mean, people worry about their privacy. People worry about not being able to control algorithms. And for us, we didn't expect that we had to also educate the people, the users, on what the system actually can do, and that it's not a master brain, that it's just some optimized process, and it does, at least in our case, it does a tiny thing, and it basically only does it optimizes like an interview process, so you don't have to go through 300 questions that are not relevant to you. So the challenge is to educate people on what your technology can do and what it cannot do, so people are not afraid of interacting with your system.
Mm-hmm. I think that's, yeah.
Can I plant a dangerous idea to this audience, which is that, I know this is probably the wrong place to say this, but all disruption is not good. There is some disruption in our life that is not good. To take an example, taxis. Now, the taxi industry definitely needed disruption. The taxi industry didn't need Uber, though. The way it's disrupting the taxi industry, it's hard to begin where to criticize a company like Uber, because they have such bad values, not only within themselves, but they've stolen all the value out of that system. And the dream that we actually, people who are developing the internet, people who are working in AI, had of seamlessly connecting the customer with the customer who wants to be transported with the person with the car who has got spare time in their car. You could seamlessly connect those people together and improve the efficiency of the system. What we've ended up with, though, is this obscene company in the middle that's stolen all the value, to the point with which that, well, maybe the customer's benefiting, but the person who owns the car isn't. They're sleeping in their car. Is there evidence that people have actually killed themselves, committed suicide because they're earning so little money? Uber has stolen all that value out of the system. And yes, the system needed disrupting, but not with a company whose values are so clearly unaligned with those of society. And we may end up with a system where it was good that we paid extra for our taxes so that handicapped people could actually have the same price taxes as me or you. Mm. And that only happens because we regulate. It doesn't happen by allowing the system to happen, by allowing the market to allow a freedom to operate and disrupt in any way at all. So whilst I embrace and I encourage this audience to disrupt, it's not that all disruption is good.
But that's an important point. I mean, I get a lot of discussion about the issue of AI or self-learning machines that are doing decisions that could be discriminatory against groups of people we don't even know yet before, because the system might recognize them as one group that stands for a certain point. And so I'm very interested in your opinion on how, when we develop these systems and train them, how can we assure, well, first of all, of course, we have to be clear about what are our values, what kind of tasks are suitable for these systems, and what would we leave with humans, maybe. And but on the other hand, when we think it's good to use them, how do we avoid these discriminatory effects, or how do we recognize them at all? Do you have any ideas on that?
You've made the first step, which is you recognize that you have a problem, right? That there is algorithmic discrimination, algorithmic bias is a problem, and it's already hitting us today. It's not smart AI, it's already happening today. Yeah. And we've been sold a complete lie. Companies like Google and Facebook have sold us a complete lie, which is that algorithms are not less biased than humans. Algorithms can be even more biased than humans. In fact, they're worse than humans, because at least with a human, I can ask for an explanation, and you can be held responsible for your decision. With an algorithm, most of the algorithms we have today, you can't ask for an explanation, and they can't be held responsible.
Could you imagine that we program algorithms and systems that kind of have a sideline that gives explanation?
Yes,
why?
We'll do that.
Yeah.
I think that we have to go away from those pure reinforcement algorithms, because that also is reinforcing the negative side. If you once click on Facebook on a certain ad, which is negative, the algorithm is reinforcing it. And I think one of the future things we have to deal is to better go with uncertainty and contrariness. I think more mature systems will better deal with those things arise. If in shopping, if I want a Gucci bag, but just spend 50 euros, then I'm in a conflict. And I think good systems will try to handle this conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Rupert, how do we get serendipity? I mean, the nice thing about shopping in the real world is that you discover things that you wouldn't have found by searching by keywords.
I think serendipity is a cool word. I think we have to build systems that allow a lot of entry points to the system. I think most systems have just one doorway page. I think we need different doorway pages, and then having a kind of mind walk through the system with an undefined optimum. And I think the system must be as clever to see, okay, here I have a good local optimum to do something reasonable. And that's what I meant with uncertainty and all that stuff.
So maybe as a kind of a last round before we ask for questions, maybe if each one of you could either make a wish, what would you like to see, what kind of AI, use of AI in the future, or where do you see the biggest chances of using AI in the field of your activity, so for the future, starting from today? Who would like to start? Toby? Go ahead. Rupert, come on.
It's a simple wish. I want to see good AI, really treating consumers having a kind of fair trade in every respect, taking into consideration what's the best for the user. I think that's a real cornerstone in all the decision making we are going to automate. Having humans behind who are conscious about the consequences, who are taking responsibility, that every automated decision will lead to something. That's my wish. Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to sort of agree with Rupert in the sense that I'd like people to realize that the future's not fixed, but the future is the choice of the decisions we make today. And AI is a morally neutral technology. If we make the right decisions, it can make us healthier, wealthier, and happier. If we make the wrong decisions, it's going to be used in warfare to make warfare terrible. It's going to be used to disrupt our political system, which is already pretty broken. It's going to be used to sell us objects that we don't need. It's going to be used to make our lives and increase inequality within our society. But that's about the choices we make today, about how we use the technology. Like any technology, we get to choose how the technology is used, whether it's used to disrupt our lives in good ways or in bad ways.
Thank you. Viviane.
Here. Yeah, I mean, like you introduced myself, I'm an architect, you know. I don't know much details about the capabilities of AI, but for me as a consumer, I wish AI to be not only a tool by huge corporations that have commercial interests in myself. I wish that people who develop these algorithms have and want to develop good algorithms also have the resources that the huge commercial players have in order to actually build what's good AI. I guess I think it's also a matter of funding, and the good people have to get funding for good AI.
Okay, so we have a couple of minutes left to take your questions to the panel. If you have anyone who'd like to ask something, yeah, please, if you could use the microphone.
Hello, am I on? I am. Thank you for a fascinating talk. Do you think, if we have a moral choice about AI, do you think our legislation bodies are too slow to keep up with the racing technology of the tech giants? I guess that's to Toby.
Yes, our technology races ahead faster than society does. The one great thing, though, is the European Union is probably the one parliamentary body that is more ahead than the rest of the parliaments, than the German parliament, than the British parliament, the US parliament, which was actually, interesting enough, before Trump, Obama had a fantastic report published by the White House Office of Science and Technology. Of course, Trump just sat on that. It's actually pretty much closed down the Office of Science and Technology. So any legislative lead that the US had has now been squandered. So Europe is, things like the Data Protection Act that's coming into force next year is a good example of how Europe is leading the way, but still behind the curve in terms of where the technology is. But yes, we need to pick up our game.
Any other questions? Yes.
I would like to know from you if you have any things about how are we going to make sure that in like 10 years from now we still know the parameters the AI uses to decide on probably critical questions or critical decisions, and know, okay, this is the outcome which has these parameters, so that we don't have a black box and the AI is dictating us something and yeah, we don't know where it comes from.
I think we are trying to make AI more accountable, having more white box model, making it clear on what parameters the decisions will be made, and giving users the choice to get out of the filter bubble. But I think making it more accountable and say, okay, that's how the system is looking at you, and that's why we are taking that decision, is one way to do it. Maybe it's not all, but having more, being more aware that the system must be more transparent than it's at the moment. At the moment, everybody's saying that's the algorithm. I think that's a stupid idea. 10 years ago, when we still called it data mining, this has not been satisfying. At the moment, it's very sexy to say it's the algorithm, but it's not a solution.
The good thing is you're in Europe, so at least next year, May next year, when the Data Protection Act comes into force, you can demand an explanation. It's not clear what that means, and my legal friends tell me that you could drive a horse and cart through the legal protection, because it's only for purely machine decisions. So if a human has touched the decision in any way, like a human reads out the decision to you, then you have no recourse to any explanation. So it's a beginning, but it's definitely not the end.
Do we have another question? Doesn't seem to be the case. So I would like to thank the panelists for discussing this with us, for sharing your views on the perspectives of AI. And I think it was quite clear that it's another new technology, and it's upon us to decide on what we do with it and how we further develop it. So we can't sneak out of this and leave it all to the machines, but the responsibility is on us to design the machines and our future. So thank you for being here and sharing your views, and thank you for listening.